It was really nice. Thank you very much for being with us. Also today, we will start the talks, the day 2 of the talks, with a debate, the debate that everybody wants to hear, and is a debate with Mark Caney from PADI, Simon Mitchell, Mark Powell from Scuba Diving International, and Jean-Claude Monachon from SSI, Scuba Schools International. We launched a challenge to these 3 gentlemen here to discuss the future of teaching in diving, because it is something that we all believe that it's the foundation, of course, of the industry, of the activity of diving. So if we don't acquire young people to the activity, if they don't start diving, we don't get any younger. So we need new players. You need new people diving and sharing these incredible worlds, underwater worlds. So thank you for being here with us, PADI, SDI and SSI. And as you know, we launched during the months before the show questions and asked people on social media. If it wasn't like that, it wouldn't be possible to have those inputs from all around the world. And I've gathered some questions that I would like to share with you. I ask the audience to participate as much as you can, as you want. There will be someone at the room with microphones. Okay, Francisca, great. But I would like to start with a question not from the audience, or not from the Facebook and Instagram, but something that I heard yesterday. So it would be the first question, because someone, I believe that you mentioned Mark Powell, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say Mark Powell because I don't know if you see me with the lights, and if I say Mark, it's going to be a problem. So yesterday you said something, so I'd like to ask you if this way of working in terms of agencies like PADI, this is not in fact the McDonald's of diving. When you go to the standardization and you have all the standards and procedures that have some foundation on the standards, aren't we producing the McDonald's of diving?
I think we are in danger of that, and if we standardize everything, and more importantly, assume that the standardization will do the job. Gareth talked about it in his presentation as well. Just standardizing things doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So, as we all said yesterday, standards are a good thing, but it is the start of the process. So yeah, I think there is a danger that we do McDonaldize. It's an awkward phrase, but yeah, there is a danger we go down that route and assume that the standards will solve the problem. They won't. We need to use those as a basis, but then we need things on top, and we're seeing that in schools. There was a push previously to standardize things in schools, and now the sort of the momentum is swinging back away from that. So yeah, it's a danger, but I think we can fight against that danger.
Mark, Caney, Eduardo from Brazil asks us, writes, more than 30 years without innovation on scuba entry-level courses. What is PADI going to do about it?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would challenge that there's been no innovation on entry-level courses in 30 years. Over 30 years, there have been considerable refinements and improvements to the open water course, for example. And those have been in response to problems we've identified, and we found solutions for them. For example, a classic one was we used to teach buddy breathing. Then we found that wasn't a terribly safe procedure. It was much better to use alternate air sources. So we made alternate air sources required and dropped buddy breathing. We teach people to make a descent over a delicate bottom so that they not only descend, but they stop before they hit the bottom. We teach them how to deal with things like if their tank band comes loose on their cylinder, which is a common problem, we teach them how to deal with a low pressure inflator, which is leaking air into the BCD constantly. We've included things like the use of computers, e-learning. So there have been considerable changes to the entry-level training programs. And as I said yesterday, for those of you that are here, don't assume just because something's been around for a long time, it's a bad thing. My example I gave yesterday was the brake lights on the back of a car. Just because they have been around for a long time doesn't mean that we should get rid of them. If something works, that's a reason not to change it.
Thank you. Jean-Claude, of course, there's an easy answer, but that you are not giving that one, I'm sure. Julie Landreud from Belgium, asked why don't we have a younger or a younger person in the woman on the panel. Of course, the immediate, because I didn't invite one, but in fact I didn't invite because I asked to the agencies reference of who would be the right person to be here discussing this. So why do you think that SSI has Jean-Claude Monachon and not a female colleague of yours here doing this debate?
Thank you, Duarte. Well, thank you very much. I think it has probably to do with the work that I do. I'm taking care of international business development, and I would challenge also this affirmation because I was in the past 2 months twice in Asia. And when you go to Asia, when you go to China, when you go any place, or I would say on the Far East, you would see that this image is completely different to what we have here as a perception. First of all, you have a younger public. I would say the average is definitely below 30 years old in terms of professionals, dive center owners, and obviously divers. But also the average of the female into the diving business is very high. I would say, at least for what I can see and perceive, not only from the statistics, is that we have probably close to 50%, when not more, on the female side. So what's the secret? And I think the secret is definitely the owners of the dive centers, the resorts, they have been opening their arms. They have also showed that the diving industry can be fun. And I remember we had a flag, and Mark may remember very well, we had this flag, diving is fun. And it's still. But I would say in the Western world, we have the tendency to stick to it. And I am very pleased when I see young people joining. I can be somewhere else and support them, no problem.
Well, I don't know how is, to be perfectly honest, I don't know how it is in Asia, but in fact, in Europe, we feel that divers are aging and younger people are coming for the, like the to-do list. So I already did the try dive. That is something that we should maybe discuss a little bit further here, right? Which I think is an interesting discussion, but I think there's an issue here, but maybe during this debate, some ideas will arise. Again, from the audience, I don't see anything. So if someone wants, I ask the people that are helping on, the guys that are helping on the room, if there's someone that wants to ask a question, please give them the mic and say something to me so that this can be more participated, okay? Ron Peters from the Netherlands, he writes, I am very curious what the main federations are planning to do about rapidly aging averages for instructors and how to keep young professionals in the industry from the entire career instead of just quitting in their late 20s, early 30s. So also on the professional side of it, Mark, PADI, I'm sure, as in all agencies, the instructors are the most important piece of the business. Do you have any information you would like or you want to share with us about let's for the average age of a PADI instructor, incoming some insights that might help to, again, if we don't have data, we cannot talk, really talk or discuss it in a.
Well, as Jean-Claude alluded to, you see a different picture depending where you are in the world. So if you go, for example, to Egypt, the Red Sea, or to the Far East, places like Thailand, you'll find that most of the people who are learning to dive and therefore going through the ranks and becoming instructors are younger people. And it's pretty much an equal mix of men and women in those marketplaces. When you come back to the places those tourists have come from, so mainland Europe, let's say, the people who tend to keep diving in those locations tend to be the older, more affluent people, the people who are prepared to put time in. But the new generations of divers coming in and of instructors, there's a very good balance of younger people, both genders. And so I have no concerns for the health of the industry in that respect. And just one other thing, coming back to the point you made before about why do you get old people coming up at these panels? Well, it tends to happen to some degree because if you ask an agency to send one person who can answer any question, they're going to send somebody experienced. And the only way you get experience is to hang around for a while. So that's why you do tend to find the older people turning up at these kind of meetings. Yeah, with women, definitely a lot more around. And for example, we're just rewriting some of our technical diving courses, and the person in charge of that is a woman. And Vicky Batten, her name is a great technical diver. And that's what considered by many to be a real bastion of male supremacy. It's not.
You want to add something to that, Mark?
Yeah, I think I would echo part of what Mark was saying. I'm fairly optimistic about the demographics in terms of age and gender. I think it does depend on where you go, not just worldwide, but very, very locally. So, for example, I was literally having this conversation with someone at a dive site a couple of months ago, and they were saying, why are all the divers older? I said, look over there, and there's an instructor, one of our instructors, young guy in his 20s, and he's surrounded by students who are also in their 20s. And I think that is part of the process that we as agencies have to go through. We have to encourage young instructors. Young divers don't necessarily want to learn with someone who's old enough to be their father or possibly even grandfather. They want to learn with someone that they can associate with, that they identify with. So yeah, we have to encourage that. Again, I'm fairly optimistic. The last instructor trainer workshop I ran in the UK, we had a guy in his 20s and a lady who was not much more than that. They're the future of the industry. And then the last thing I would say is, if we do want to encourage those people into the industry, we've got to support them and not put them off. Some of the ideas that I was talking today in terms of the way training is going, it's younger instructors that are pushing this. And if we tell them, no, you have to do it the way we've always done it. I've heard people say, oh no, you can't do that. That doesn't work. And these instructors are actually doing it. That's going to discourage them. So yeah, I think it's not as bad as some people make out, but we do have work to do to encourage that, definitely.
Thank you. Mike Tang from the United Kingdom wrote, and he mentions here something that I believe is also two relevant examples. I've been an instructor for 12 years now. I was examined back when I got qualified, but haven't had a formal check since then. Does that feel right? Second, we recently had a technical diver join us for a day's diving. They then looked nervous underwater and they panicked, blah, 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 blah. So the problem of revisiting what you do when you take the course and checking if the diver is able or not to SSI has some concern on this periodic evaluation of skills. It's not something that's
There is no plans on that, but sorry. But if you look, you have a driving license, and driving has changed quite a lot in the past 10, 20 years. Do we have to redo a test? No, and probably we would be dangerous. We would be considered maybe on how we are driving. I don't know. I don't think so. There's a self-responsibility, but I think you cannot test over and over. They have been proving to have, let's say, experience. And of course, if they don't dive and they don't teach for a while, they have to go through further steps and retesting, maybe being reevaluating, retaking a course. And I would say the standards that we have in that respective on the various agencies are pretty going in the safe way. And look, I don't think that the accidents are growing in perspective. I think in the contrary.
okay. I know that there are some shop owners and instructors in the room. Okay. There's a question there, please.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the previous topic about demographics and how we get young instructors in. And I think we do a good job at that, but we do a horrible job at keeping them long-term to the point where they can actually rise to what I would consider a professional level, right? We treat them a lot of times, the dive shop, and this is in Vancouver in Canada, where they're paid $6 a student to dive. And the dive shop is putting it on the instructor for the dive shop to make money either way. And that we almost put them in indentured servitude. They put time and money into becoming an instructor, and then we give them not a living wage. We treat our instructors like they're just transient surfer workers who we can use for a season and throw away. And I've got a whole bag full of other people who want your job. And we miss the boat in maintaining people who become really good professionals, who do good quality jobs long-term, and will bring more people in because we tend to treat them that way. So I guess my question is, how do we change that? How do we keep these working professionals and not just grind them through? They're here for a couple of years, then they're like, okay, I got to go make a living somewhere. I had my fun in the sun, but now I got to go make a living.
Yeah, please.
Well, I think that's the very deep problem in the diving industry. I would say today we create very good diving instructors, diving professionals. And then last February, when we were in Paris, I had a presentation on the stage, and it was about the dream of being a diving instructor, living maybe and teaching in the Maldives, what to expect and so on. But then I had some shop owners and I asked them, what do you expect from a dive professional? And the answer was pretty straightforward. One guy said, the agencies, they train very good instructors, so they are good. But what do they miss? They miss the sales skills, the communication and interpersonal social relationship skills, and this is missing. And I think this is where we have to work, because as I said also yesterday, and you mentioned that, Mark, also based on the value, I think we have a lot of shop owners, let's say they were instructors and they decided to become shop owners and they did not have the business skills. So what do? They open a shop, they put all their money into creating the shop, compressor, equipment, everything, and then they forget that they need to have customers, so they don't have money for the marketing. But on top of that, they will check what is my competitor doing, and they will check on the price. And instead of raising the value of what they propose, they go down by the price. That's why you have no margin and you cannot pay your professionals. And that's why you have this turnover. And I think this is where the problem is, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. And there is no simple answer because it's all interconnected. And the customers are part of the problem because they want the cheapest course. They want the best course, but they want the cheapest course. And that drives everything down, which then leads to the situation where I've seen job adverts where they want an instructor who speaks at least 2 languages, can drive a boat, and as a service technician who can do sales and do the social, and they'll pay absolute minimum wage. I mean, that is a lot of skills. That is a very talented individual, and yet we're paying them absolute minimum wage. In some cases, this happens in many Northern Europe and certainly in the UK. Instructors who teach for fun, for the experience, they're not even getting paid because the dive centers can't afford to pay them. So all of these things are interconnected. The earlier question, why is there innovation courses? Well, why has there been no innovation in open water pricing? Look at what open water courses are today and look what they were 20 years ago. You'll find that in a lot of cases, it's exactly the same number. Everything else has increased in price, and yet dive centers feel that they've got to keep their prices down, cuts down the margin, and so we get this churn in the industry. So we have to do exactly what you were suggesting. We have to make sure that the industry treats its professionals as professionals and not, slave labor.
Yeah. Dan, please. Oh, sorry. I thought it was Dan. Please, Anton.
Anton Zukov, Portugal, IMTD agency instructor trainer. In fact, I just want to say the same about that my opinion, the main problem nowadays is that, first of all, there are a lot of young instructors who are ready to do a job of instructor just for fun. And at the same time, diving centers offer the job for that mass instructors, young instructors audience, and of course they see that why should I pay that instructor as for professional if I can hire even younger guy just for 3 months and after to change him to or her to another guy. That's it. And it kills the industry, my opinion. I have no idea what to do with that, but obviously it shouldn't be like that. For example, there is the fresh example in Portugal. One of my friend came to Portugal to live. She's an instructor, very experienced instructor, and she started to work as an instructor. Everything was well, but in fact, she told me in 3 months, Anton, you know what I feel that diving center and the same situation in other diving centers. They just simply don't need me as so qualified instructor. They just need me as a guide. So, and my qualification is higher. So of course we can say that okay, if you don't want to do the job or just work as a freelancer, promote yourself, so Facebook, etc. But we are talking about anyway the system, and if you talk about the standards as a system, probably we have to create some system with regulating of the industry. Otherwise, we can see what we have now. There are plenty of young instructors and not so young instructors, in fact, because there are some elderly people also who on their pension want to do some job just for fun, and they became instructors and etc. You know that. And very few really professional guys on the market with high qualification who are able to teach, who are able really to teach you diving. Yeah. And there is a huge gap, my opinion, between all that, like the bottom part of the pyramid and the top part of the pyramid. And that middle structure, it seems like it's thinning. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to comment, to address that? Please.
First of all, one thing we as the training agencies can't do is tell people what to charge or what to pay, because that's price fixing and it's illegal in most countries. So unfortunately, we are in a capitalist market and the market controls what happens. So a couple of things. First of all, speaking on behalf of PADI, our philosophy has always been we should try and train our business owners, the people who run the dive stores and so forth, to be as professional as possible. We show them how to price their courses properly, not just based on, I'll find out what he charges and be a bit less than him, to actually work out what all your costs are, calculate how much money you need to make in a year, and then actually budget for all the things properly. So we try and install proper business training into the people who run the stores. I'm sure my colleagues here do the same sort of thing. So educating the people that run the businesses to be able to run their businesses as businesses is a big first step. Because what we tend to see in the diving industry is the equivalent of somebody who says, I like drinking beer, so I could run a pub. Same thing, I like diving, so I could run a dive school. Yes, it's great if you like diving, if you love diving, it's fabulous, but it's a business like any other. And for it to be efficient, run properly, make money, you've got to run it along the same business lines you'd run any other business on. So people have to make that mental switch from I'm doing this for fun because I love diving to I am now running a business in diving. And that's sort of quite a different thing. And the people who run the most successful diving centers around the world are much more likely to pay decent money to their instructors, because they know in order to keep their reputation as the top dive centers, they have to have good, motivated people. And that's talking about it from the perspective of the person who's running the business, but from the perspective of the new instructor, they can make themselves more employable by adding to their skill sets and putting them in a better competitive situation compared to other instructors. And that includes some of the things that Mark was mentioning, like if you can speak multiple languages, great. If you can operate a compressor, if you can repair equipment, if you can run a boat, all these kind of things. You can also increase your credentials, the number of courses you can teach. Maybe you want to get into things like technical diving, all these kind of things. That makes you a far more desirable professional, and you're more likely to be able to command money from somebody who understands the business.
They're good news, though. At the moment, every place I go, every place I travel, the first comment I get or the first question is, do you have some instructors to recommend? We need instructors. So there is a big lack of instructors right now due to COVID, because some lost their jobs. They went back to their previous life, I would say. And today there is a huge gap. So obviously it has given an opening for many young people. Of course, there will also be some people 40 plus that will change their life and career. You cannot avoid that. But I think that the number of young people will maybe not be ready to stay in a 9-to-5 job and realize what we did in the past. We realized that we could do something out of passion. They will discover that right now, and they have opportunities. And this might be also a change in the way they are paid, because the value of an instructor that has more skills today has increased dramatically. I saw an ad from a instructor. It says, I'm available, basically, and he listed a few things. He got 256 comments under his post. So just that was not the case before. Before you had 256 people posting something and one comment, right? So I think there is a light at the end of this tunnel.
Are there any questions, other questions in the audience? Not yet. So Bob Pasker from the United States, he asks, he says that the priority in courses, it is getting all the skills checked off in 4 confined water dives and on vacation dives all year. So after you take the course, on the boat is buddy, buddy, buddy. So what I think that's what Bob is talking about. He feels that there's a gap between what we teach during what the instructors teach during the courses and what you are expected and how you are expected to behave when you go on your vacation and you should use the skills that you acquired. You want to say something about this, Mark?
I think I did. That was pretty much my presentation yesterday. And I think he's absolutely right. Yeah, and I referred to it yesterday, the checklist mentality. Now, one thing I realized yesterday, I don't mean checklists in the sense of, a checklist before you go diving. I'm a big supporter. I think that's a really good idea. But this training by checklist, and again, it comes back to this is the McDonaldization of training. I've ticked all those things. Therefore, this person is a diver. And I use the phrase "teach divers, not skills," and I think that's what he's talking about. So yeah, we need to be training people to be able to go diving. I got into diving, into instruction initially because I wanted to teach people to come diving with me. They were implicitly going to be my buddies, and that shaped my way of training. And I think that's what we should be doing. And again, I mentioned it yesterday. There are people that only want to dive on holiday. They only want to dive with a professional. So we don't have to teach them to be open water divers. We can teach them to be supervised divers or scuba divers in PADI. And I think, in a lot of cases, that's actually what they want. They don't want to be on their own. They want to have a professional with them.
I know there's one question here, but okay. But I was going to say that because we have here also a freediving agency, and we have here Kirk, which is the president of PFI. I would like just to, and this is a question. I really would like to have an answer to that. Is the way, because I know that before being a free diver, or I don't know if before or if simultaneously, but you were also a technical diver instructor. Do you feel that there are some differences between the way you teach scuba diving and the way you teach free diving that might help the scuba diving processes?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things that I take from freediving and then learn from freediving. And even back in the day when I was both technical and freediving, that I would bring from the freediving world into it. As divers, we do as scuba instructors, we do a horrible job of teaching equalizing. In fact, we don't teach equalizing. We say it's like blowing your nose with a tissue. And then if that doesn't work, wiggle your jaw, move your head side to side, and then immediately we go into the pool and we start causing barotraumas, right? How many of us has come out with their student and they're like, oh, I got water in my ear, I can't get out. And we've created brightest media. When I teach an entry-level freediving program, I have an online learning system that takes them for 1 hour to learn not Valsalva, which is just the really simple way of teaching of equalizing. And we don't teach it. All we do is say it's like blowing your nose. And in that hour, they come to my course before we even hit the pool, before I've even shaken their hand, and they already can equalize Frenzel technique, which is far superior from Valsalva. And so when I look at the vast majority of people who say, and we do this, and this really goes against the long-term health of our industry, sometimes when we do these dives, discover scubas and things like that, and how many people come out and say, well, I tried that, but I'm one of those people who can't equalize. I rarely ever get a person who can't equalize, be it the 1 ear, be it the both ears. And it's because of freediving and my length in the industry, I've been able to perfect equalizing. And it's a skill we don't teach instructors. And therefore, they don't know how to teach it. And so that perpetuates the not being able to equalize. So if I have 10 people who do a diving course And 4 of them are like, well, it was fun, but my ear really hurt and I had to go to the doctor. And I'm one of those people who can equalize. They're going to tell 20 people about their experience in diving. And it wasn't a great experience. And those people who had a great time, they're going to tell 2. And so one of the things I would say that from free diving, because we're head down, because we're going at a meter a second, because we're on 1 breath of air, that we've had to really figure out how to teach equalizing and how to do it in the best possible. And that I think that's the one big thing the scuba industry has to learn from free diving is how to teach equalizing, because you spend about 5 minutes on it. And for me, after they've done their 1-hour class session, it's a 1 hour, or their 1 hour online learning. It's another hour in a class going through equalizing, because it is the single biggest barotrauma that they're going to experience, and be a short term or a long term, but it's the negative experience that they tell everyone about. So that would be the one thing I'd say.
Thank you. One more question. Are ratios for try dives, scuba discover, discover scuba too high?
Yes. Simple. And this is one area where I would have an issue with the current standards. Taking, and coming back to Kirk's point, taking people in the water for their very first time in the water, especially if it's in open water, for a time is nuts in my view. I have 2 hands, so 2 people. That's it. And with children, 1-to-1, because incidents with children are really bad for your business.
So is this okay? Let me see if I understand. So try dives, 1 instructor, and you say instructor, right? 1 instructor, 2 try divers. Mm-hmm. And if 1 is a children, 1 instructor, 1 children. Mark?
Yeah, well, it's easy to say this sounds terrible, but let's look at some data. Last year, a study was published. It had analyzed over 7 million introductory dives. That's a lot of data. And in particular, it looked at 1 set of data, which was a 13-year period since the last significant changes were made to the content of a introductory dive. And I'm talking here about the PADI ones, okay? Because we wanted to see if it was true that introductory dives might be more dangerous than regular diving. And based on that 13-year period, the incident rate was 0.87 fatalities per 100,000 dives. Now, if you compare that to the statistics for regular diving, there are a number of studies that have been done. If you average out the numbers of them all, it's about 2 participants per 100,000. So based on that, the Discover Scuba Diving type experience, the introductory diving, was half as risky as the regular diving experience. So the data does not support the fact that it's much more dangerous to do an introductory dive. Now, the ratios are something which you can discuss endlessly, but a point Mark made yesterday, which is a very good point, is whenever you look at ratios, it always says, these are the ratios in best conditions. So when you have pretty much optimal conditions and you've got 4 little natural aerials that you're going to take in the water, that rarely happens. And what we do tend to find is that we know from the data we come back to us that the vast majority of introductory dives are not done at a ratio of 4-to-1. They are done at more conservative ratios. So again, it's very easy to emotively say, well, that looks wrong, but the data does not support the fact that there's a problem.
But would you say that there's the risk factor in that, but also the success of the experience, I think that's if you are on one-to-one basis or a one-to-two basis, you will have a much more interesting experience, a better experience that would also have an impact on the number of people that do a try dive and then proceed to a course. Do you have some data on that on PADI? And I would like that. I'm going to ask exactly the same to the other agencies, SDI and SSI. It's something that I would like to know. How many try dives are we converting to divers? You want to be the first one to disclose that, or you don't want to
Me?
disclose that?
I can't tell you exact numbers. We do know a lot of people will do an introductory dive as a kind of a tick box exercise. I want to try bungee jumping. I want to try diving. And once they've done it, they've got the t-shirt, they're happy now. They've ticked that thing off. However, it is your best chance to persuade that person that you can dive and to show them how great it is to be weightless, particularly if you can show them some fantastic marine life and so forth. And so we do know a lot of people are converted and turned into divers, but there will always be, I'm afraid, a lot of people who just want to collect that experience. And they may not learn to dive right away, but quite often then they think, well, actually, I could do that. And maybe later when they have time, when they're in the right place, they will learn to dive. But if they don't ever put their head under the water, then you've lost any opportunity to convert them.
True. Mark?
I think Simon had a comment as well, but coming back to the statistics, and you know, no reason to disagree with those statistics that you said. Basically, try dives are twice as safe as normal diving.
Safe is a...
Yeah, the risk is half as much as normal diving. I think the risk of try dives should be an order of magnitude smaller than normal diving, because we're talking about a situation with an instructor in a very shallow dive. And if the risk is half as much as all of the other diving, including deeper diving, different difficult situations, I think that's a bad statistic. That's not a statistic that argues for larger ratios. It's a statistic that argues against it. I know we're never going to agree on this, but that's my view anyway.
Jean-Claude?
Yeah, I think I agree with what has been said so far, and I don't have any data to change something. I would just say that this is a unique opportunity when you have somebody trying to dive and they have this wish. They may want to tick the box, but they have maybe something else in their mind. Now, the whole emphasis is done previously, before the dive. The briefing is brilliant, then they go diving, and then they finish the dive, and usually there is no follow-up. The person that was there before has maybe another group and disappears. So you leave these people somewhere there, and it's their decision to continue or not. And one of the centers that have been working with, he put at the end of the scuba, the tri-scuba or DSD, whatever you want to call it, freshly certified open water divers. The result or the conversion of these people trying to dive was incredibly high, because you face somebody that is already passionate and share his experience about the normal course. And that was the result. And usually I would say we forget that we should put the emphasis at the end of the try dive.
Okay. Please, Simon.
Thanks, Arlindo. I just wanted to make a quick comment about relative risk. Mark, I think it's pretty hard to take an adventure activity to an order of magnitude risk lower than a half a case per 100,000 dives. And if you compare that risk with a lot of the other adventure activities that people can undertake, I think it's actually a pretty good record. And I just want to congratulate Mark for citing real data that's a rarity in this industry that was recently published. The only thing I want to say is you failed to point out that those data were published in diving medicine's most prestigious journal, Diving and Hyperbaric Medicine, and that it is freely available as a published paper on PubMed Central for anyone who wants to look it up. I think the authors were Carl Shreves and Peter Buzzacott. So if you just go onto PubMed online, type in Shreve's K or Buzzercott P and push search, that paper will come up. You can download it for free. But it's actually a rare example of real hard data that pertains to risk in recreational diving. And I commend it to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Any more questions?
And now something completely different about you've been discussing, but I think it's important because it's an area where there's a lot of risk involved, which is when do the training agencies start training for skippers, either for scuba, recreational, or technical? Because it's very nice to teach instructors and dive guides and centers to be business people and so on, but if you don't know how to handle the boat with the divers, with the right way, put the line correctly, pick up the people as you should, have enough people on the boat to do the service, you have all this risk of somebody that is just a sailor and
I don't know if you want to comment, Laura's,
I
You?
can comment.
please.
The reason we haven't tended to get involved in the training of skippers is because people have been using boats longer than they've been diving in most countries. And in most countries, there are established protocols, schemes for the training of skippers. And so we haven't tended to interfere because in most countries, they've got a system there for training the people, and often that's what you need to be able to operate a craft commercially. So we've left them to do that because it seemed to be the most appropriate thing.
the part that concerns just the diving. You have to attend the customers, you have to help them, you have to put yourself on the right place for them to do the right dive. If there's, and everyone here knows that, if there's a little bit of current, if the skipper is doing something else, if he doesn't put in the boat where he should, he can be an excellent skipper, but if he doesn't know how to help his customers, he won't help them. And he may give chance of an incident or an accident. And you know that everyone here has suffered that, I'm sure.
I think it would be interesting to get the Brandy's insight on that, because Brandy's is I'm not saying that you are a skipper on boats that take divers to the water, but I know that you are a skipper, you are a diver. Do you think that there's some point here? Give Brandy the mic, please.
It's really interesting because it's not really if PADI should teach that. It almost comes to the business, you would think, and it's different in every location. So every location you go to, you would hope that they were getting training in that location for what's important and to watch for. But you bring up an excellent point, because as someone who works on boats, I am often terrified when people are picking us up and I've got a group of divers and it's often not as safe as you want it to be. So it is an interesting thing of where that training comes in. And I feel like it's got to sort of be on the business level of this company runs here. These are the things you need to sort of train the whole crew on how to do it. So I don't know if that's an answer, but interesting point.
I think
It is,
it
thank
also
you.
depends on where you are in the world, because there are very local regulations. So, and actually there are some agencies that do have boat handling for diver courses. It tends to be, certainly in the UK, it tends to be the volunteer or the training agencies, because the minute you become commercial, the rules change, and it's a whole different set of rules. So yeah, it gets very complicated. It would almost have to be country specific.
We have we have another.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Hello,
Please.
just for me to understand the data that you talk about, because what if we are talking about, like for instance, in SSI, we have the basic diver. In PADI, I think is the DST. Mark can tell what is the name, because one thing is the experience that people do a part of theory, then go to the pool or the confined waters, and then the open water diving. And for sure, that ones need to be registered. But most of the other ones, from what I know, essential from the reality that I live, okay, people don't register anything. So this is why I try to understand when that data will come, because most of the try dives in Portugal and in Cape Verde and so on, and when I am, people simply take the customers, go to the water, go to confined waters, they don't register anything. So this is why I try to understand from where comes that statistical data, okay? The second situation is we already talked about is if our business is completely devaluated with the time, because like Mark said, since 20 years ago or more, the price of the open water is still the same. And then comes one really concern, because we, like Jean-Claude said, with the COVID, people change it, okay? And now what happens? During the COVID, they don't have, they work as the possibility to work as a diving instructor. So they come, they switch completely. Now they realize that they do more money and in more stable manner. And now we are facing one situation that I don't know how it will be the future, that we don't have workers to the field. And that is a problem, because if you don't have workers, of course, that you will not have business. So it's a really concern, okay? So the two questions from my side.
Who wants to comment on Duarte's, Jean-Claude, you want to say something?
Well, Duarte addressed the source of the data, and I think he's right. I'm not questioning the data at all, but you can only count the data that you have. But for sure, the biggest problem that we have is that many dive centers do not register try scuba, DSDs, or whatever. So I would say the data is not even the reflecting the reality. And that's a problem also, because if you don't register the person that did try to dive, then obviously you cannot do the follow-up.
But wouldn't you think that that's a bit the responsibility of the agencies, at least to try to influence these two elements? First, the quality of the experience, reducing or not the number, but reducing the number of participants, and maybe having a better a better procedure, a better standards and procedures on how to do the try dive. And second, it wouldn't make sense for the agencies to demand the dive centers to do only the try dives that are registered, so that could be then taken into account on those statistics that Mark mentioned.
I think we are working on that, because since we went into digital, since we went into the digitalization of everything, we made it so easy for everyone to register. So the number of data is increasing as well.
No, but yeah, but I believe that when the dive center makes a registration, he has to pay a fee, because he issues. You don't charge any fee.
It's a zero fee.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. That's a way of obtaining all that information. But Mark, in terms of what is the idea of PADI on, because in fact it's the best opportunity to get someone to become a diver. So these two issues, the need to have it made in a proper way for the experience to be better for the try diver, and also guaranteeing that we obtain information that we can use after evaluating all that. What would you like to add?
Well, the very fact we were able to conduct a study with 7 million cases to look at is testimony to the fact we have been recording this data. Now, we're still trying to encourage more and more, but we had a lot of data there to analyze. And part of the reason we've been encouraging people to record these things is so that we can keep track of that. it's also so that we can market to them and try and persuade these people to become divers. But if you don't track something, you can't monitor it and you can't improve upon it.
You want to?
And I think Mark used the key point there, encouraging people, because you know, there's a limit to what we can do as agencies. The dive centers are our customers. We can't tell them you must do this. You know, they're our customers, not our employees. So we can't mandate. You know, if they want to run a non-agency course, that's not something that we can say you can't do that. There may be other reasons why that it's a bad idea. Certainly in many countries, in the UK, for example, that there are issues with doing that, but it's not our place as the agency to mandate that. So I think, yeah, encourage is the word rather than than mandate.
Yes, Duarte, please.
No, just following that, because what? Because as you know, like you said, when people do the basic diver, DST or whatever, they need to pay a fee and they need to register, because is a certification between brackets that correspond to an ISO rule, ISO norm, okay? But for the try scuba, not. Even we try to motivate it. For instance, for each try scuba that people do in the pool or in confined water, we give some amount, some fee for the instructor to then to discount during the renewal. But even with that, it's not easy for people to try it to register the try scuba, so the try scuba on the pool or in confined water. This is why I'll try to understand when this data become from the try scuba on confined water or in the pool, or essential from the other program that already require that people need to register, because is involving one open water dive.
Arlindo, I would like to come back to the very first point, the aging of our industry in the Western world. It was 9 years ago, I was at the boat show in Düsseldorf, and the Germans had issued a survey that our industry was aging, that was the end of the diving industry, etc. That was a very negative paper. And we have this room, and I said, actually, I'm predicting that we will lose 35 centers next year. They will close, and they will not renew. And everybody said, how can you predict that? It was very simple. I used some questionnaire at the time, and I was at PADI. And I said, look, these 35 centers, they refuse to conduct Discover Scuba Diving, because they say, why should I do that? It's not my job. I don't want to lose time. And they closed. Actually, there were more than 35. And that's very simple. If you don't use the opportunity to bring people who wants to go into the activity, then obviously you already shut the door. And in Asia, this doesn't happen, by the way.
True. Any more questions from?
About try dives. What I see is that it's easy enough to sell people try dives. And when we talk about the safety and the statistic, yeah, the formal statistic, because of the shallow, deep depth, and because of guiding and all the stuff about the safety, formally, we can count like some dives, that all the dives, they were made safety. But when we start to talk with people who experienced try dives, they say most of the people with whom I talked, they told me about, oh, Anton, I had a pain in my ears, or I had troubles with buoyancy, and for 20 minutes of that try dive, I did not see anything. Or it was not an interesting dive because the boat came to some shallow place and it was just sand and nothing to see, and etc., etc., etc. So formally, try dives, yeah, for business, it seems like for business is good because there is a lot of people and everyone is our client for that try dives. Yeah, but in fact, what I see from the land, that it kills our business. Because in fact, and I talked with a lot of people, and my personal survey is, I would say that only 20% probably of people really think, or maybe 10, even 10, really think about take a course, because their experience, in fact, not so great like the statistic tells us.
You know, that was quite,
And you know,
just one comment, that was quite a surprise from the survey that we did. The number of respondents that in fact, and it were not only Portuguese, so it was an international survey, and the number of respondents that said that were converting more than 50% of dry dives into open water divers was high. So I advise you all to download the survey that we've conducted, because there are interesting information. I would like to go on listening to your comment, but we are going to have a short break now.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe we can join and talk a little bit more. You want to say something, Mark?
Yeah, just briefly. I think we've all heard anecdotal stories about how somebody's had a bad experience, et cetera, but just a comment. I ran a dive center in Cyprus for decades, and I treated introductory dives in a different way. I think the mistake some dive centers make is they think, introductory dive, I'll charge people 30 euros, take them in, take them out, teabag them, and there's my 30 euros in my pocket, bye-bye, thank you very much. I didn't view it that way. What I tended to do was I'd turn up a hotel with some cylinders, and I'd say, people, come and have a go for free, and let them try it in the pool. And by the time I left that hotel, I would have 4 or 5 people signed up on an open water course, because I concentrated on just giving them an experience, turning him to somebody who thinks, I wonder if I would like diving, to somebody who thinks I can dive. And they then wouldn't pay me 30 euros, they'd pay me 300-400 euros for a full course. So I think people use the introductory dive concept wrongly. If you're just looking at it for making a quick buck, then you've wasted the opportunity. It's a fantastic opportunity to make someone fall in love with diving.
And it's a business decision, isn't it? There are dive centers that specialize in doing dry dives, which is fine if that's how you want to run your business. Just make sure you're making enough money out of that, because if you're not making any money out of it and you're not trying to get them back, you're not making any money. But yeah, giving away a try dive because you've got a known conversion rate to open water can equally be a good strategy. The key thing is strategy is.
So thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you here. Let's go for the coffee break.